It was amazing, though, wasn't it? I mean, even then, even though we didn't have all the technology back in those days, we still made it work, and it was a lot of fun.
Sure was.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was. We had a great time.
I still remember when we used to pull credit reports on that little old bitty modem machine you had. Remember that?
I remember when you were not there. I used to have like a telex. It was a little strip of paper that would come out and would print out the information after I was on top of the world. It's like because I had that. Could you imagine?
Oh my God! Hey everybody, it's your boy Big B, and this is going to be a side series I do called the Mentor Series. And the reason I wanted to do this is I wanted to basically pay homage and say thank you to some of the people who have dramatically influenced my growth professionally and personally. And so for my first episode, I'm sitting down with one of my earliest mentors, the guy who actually gave me my first job that had a W-2 attached to it. And his name is Joe Medina. How you doing today, bud?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Bobby.
Hey, so thank you for taking the time to sit down in the chair. Thank you for taking the time to do this with me. I mean, like I said, coming from where I came from in my career early on to where I've been blessed to be at now, I could never have done that on my own. And it had to come from not only the coaching that I received along the way, but from mentors. And you being literally my earliest mentor outside of my father, you know what I mean? Like, I really wanted to sit down with you, and I really wanted to share your story. Because you've got one of those stories, in my opinion, that movies are made of, to be totally honest. I mean, people who come from very humble beginnings and go out and create their own way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand what you're saying, but first of all, I want to thank you for telling me that you see me as a mentor next to your dad. I mean, that's wow. Thank you, Bob.
Hey, my pleasure. My pleasure. So let's go into your story. I mean, like I want the people to listen to this to know where you came from, the rise, the whole nine yards. I mean, like, how did you get started? What were you doing?
Well, it all works out of necessity. I had a hard time growing up. I didn't get the education that most people do.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to teach myself everything, including how to speak English a lot better than the rest of the people I went to school with. Because I know that in Laredo, you get out of school, yeah, you're bilingual, but your accent is horrible.
Right.
And so I worked on that a lot. And at the same time, I started learning on my own bookkeeping, so I could know a little bit of accounting. And I just love sales. And when I saw a manufactured home for the first time in my life, I was like, I don't know, 19 years old, about to get married, out of high school, not much future. Compare that to the house I was living in. I thought that was a castle.
Right.
And I remember going into my boss, who became my boss, and I told him, hey, I'd love this manufactured homes. Would you give me a chance to work for you? And
right.
He looked at me and he said, no, thank you. But I said, don't pay me.
Really?
Don't pay me, yeah. And the reason I'm telling you this, Bob, because I want you to understand that we're trying to give you a background of why I work so hard.
Right.
I was called a black and white picture when I was in high school because I only had 2 white shirts and 2 black pants. So
really?
It was like they called me the picture because I always wore the same color, so it was black and white.
Gotcha.
And it was very difficult growing up. And then I wanted to get married at a very early age. I had no idea how I was going to support my wife to be. But when I saw that manufactured home, it's like everything changed. I fell in love with that, and I decided I wanted to do that. And when I told this gentleman that I wanted to work for free, he kind of, just smiled and said, "Okay, come on the weekend, and I'll give you a chance." And I did, and then he showed me his ugliest mobile home, which is a little 1-bedroom plain vanilla that he couldn't sell. And lo and and behold, I sold it that weekend.
That
And
weekend?
That weekend. Hmm.
No training?
No training whatsoever. No, it's just I mean, like I said, I wanted to succeed,
Yeah.
and no
That
matter
drive
what,
took over.
I had the drive. Yeah, absolutely. And also I guess luck had to do with it, but that was the first one. That was the luck.
Right.
The second home, because he let me stay, it was one of the homes I liked. So now I'm selling things I like,
Right.
and I love that home. And sure enough, I sold it. And from there on, I say, hey, I can do this a lot.
Right.
And what I started doing then is understanding what I was selling. I wanted to know a lot more about my product.
Right.
So I made it a cost to be an expert. I went to the factory,
Yeah.
and I got there, and I wanted to know how it was built from zero to the walked out the door.
Right.
And I did that. And then I wanted to get involved with, well, these homes are being financed. I don't know a thing about financing. So then I said, I'm going to learn about financing. And I started talking to our lenders, and I'd go visit them, and they were nice enough to tell me enough to where I could speak better to my clients and make myself more understandable to where they would understand how the process works. Because you'd be surprised how many people are going to buy a product. In this case, was a manufactured home, but they had no idea.
Yeah.
Okay, and if I was going to tell them something, it would be wrong. Or I could always tell them, which I later learned, hey, that's a good question. Let me come back with you on that. But that I learned later. At the beginning, I just had to have the right answer.
Right. Absolutely.
So that's my humble beginning.
Wow. So how long? Because again, and I know we're going to get to the point where you launched the company you had when I came to work for you. But how long did you work for that particular person before you decided it was time to take the next step in life?
Well, I stayed with him, and I was doing so well that he almost, I think, within a few months, he made me his manager. And then he sold the business in joint partnership with another gentleman, a very wealthy person in town. And they created a new company with a lot more inventory, and I was no longer the manager because it was a big outfit now.
Right.
But he did give me a very lucrative pay, which was based on commission, because he had hired somebody who told him, hey, that's the way you pay salesmen. You don't give him a salary. You have to give him a little
Wait, you
incentive.
were on salary before?
I was on salary. He took the salary, and then he put me in commission, but where I could make money with the number of sales I sold and the amount of profit that I made. And so I did. At first, I was reluctant. I was used to my paycheck.
Sure.
And now I'm working for a living.
Yeah.
Like
that had to be.
Yeah, like self-employed. And the thing is that I started doing so well, along with another person who also is, he's a very large home builder in Texas, and we both had those same humble beginnings. He was just like me. We were very eager to make money.
Right.
And we didn't like the fact that we were on salary, so we started doing the commission deal. But it backfired on them. We started making so much money on that commission that we loved it. So then they want to say, no, these guys are making too much money. Let's put him back on salary. So to make a long story short, we both quit, went to a bank, sold ourselves to the bank at a young, tender age in the early 20s. The bank believed in us, loaned us the money, and we started our manufactured home business on our own.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
See, I didn't know that part of the story.
No.
So how old were you when you went to the bank? I got to know this.
I was probably at that time about 22 years old.
And you're presenting to a bank for a business loan?
Yes, and it was Laredo National Bank. But back then, I guess the banks were more open than they are today. It was they felt that you were good. They knew that we had a good track record. We were, young but clean cut, and we had learned to speak to people.
Sure.
So in fact, we went up to the head. I think we went all the way to the president, and sold them on it, and he gave us a chance. And not only would he lend us money to do inventory, but he said, "I'm also interested in you guys financing the homes with us." So that was even better than my boss had. And we started that, and with the idea of, I hate to say it, but it was, I'm going to put my boss out of business.
Sure.
It took me 2 years, and I did.
Ouch.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah, but because one thing that I
But
did
I
learn
mean, the
about.
thing is it wasn't vindictive.
No, no.
It was just business.
Well, it was business, and actually, let me tell you why it happened. It wasn't vindictive. It was because it was a challenge. Number one.
Right.
Number two is that when I was with him,
Mm-hmm.
I also made it a point to learn everything there was about the business that he was doing wrong.
Oh, okay.
So when I became his competitor, I knew all his defaults,
You knew the weaknesses.
all his weaknesses. Okay,
Dang.
and I worked against that. So it was even without trying, I knew I could beat him because of that.
Yeah.
So
Well, and when you launched that company, because when I went to work for you, we were People's Manufactured Housing, right?
that was correct.
Was that the name you then had when you first started, or did that change?
No, that changed because it was at the beginning. It was called Mobile City Inc.
Okay.
And it was myself, and then it became three other people. So we were four partners, and I was the general partner. They were basically not active
At 22.
at 22. Yes, and that continued for several years. But of course, all in the learning process. Back then, banks would say, "Oh yeah, come on over, bring me your client.
Right.
We'll finance it." Okay, and in fact, we'll even give you some of the interest in back as a bonus.
Wow.
So we were making a ton of money, but we had to guarantee each loan.
Oh.
And that, at that time, hey, well, who cares? I mean, who was ever thinking that the home might repossess?
Right.
And things went well for several years until the economy of the 1980s hit.
Okay.
And a lot of people, unfortunately, because of the economy, lost their homes.
Sure.
So the bank comes knocking on us. Pay me up.
Ooh.
So as I was bringing the homes in, I'm trying to resell them. It's harder to resell them because financing now is tight.
Yeah.
So again, to make a long story short, we grew very fast. We made a lot of money. And in a year's time, the repossessions and the buybacks forced us into closing the company. We didn't go bankrupt. I did close it down appropriately, paid everybody off, but lost everything that I had made.
Right.
Because I had to pay the bank.
So you were back to zero.
I was back to zero.
Right where you started.
Right where I started.
What is that? How old were you then?
I think at that time I was about 34 years old.
So arguably about 12 years of
prosperity,
and then the rug's ripped out.
That's correct.
Wow. What did that feel like?
Well,
other than humbling, I mean,
by that time I'm married and I have 3 children, a house and a car, and I had to sell it all. Sell the houses, sell the cars. Couldn't support him. It was hard because I ended up on a divorce.
Yeah.
And ended up at home with my parents, which a friend of mine loaned me the house so they could live with me because they couldn't also make ends meet. So it's now 35 years old or 34, I can't remember.
And you're
at home with my parents.
Wow.
And find a way to support my kids and my ex-wife because I don't believe in any deadbeat fathers, and I'm not
sure.
And I wasn't gonna be one.
Wow. So, because I mean, to me, honestly, like what you're describing sounds a lot like what the mortgage industry and the housing industry came out of in 2007 and whatever, right?
That's correct.
So, obviously there's a cyclical aspect to this, but I know how I had to deal with it when I went from making really good money to, okay, are we going to buy bread or am I going to pay the light bill kind of a thing. At what point did you decide to pick yourself up? Did you go, because and the reason I'm asking, boss, is I went through a period during mine where it was, I'm not as good as I thought I was. I needed to get just a regular job. Like, I was feeling so sorry for myself. Like, I just couldn't it was hard to find the mustard to get up and go to work every day kind of a thing. Did you experience that? Or are you one of the rare breeds that it was like, okay, I'm down. I'm not out. I'm breathing. Let's go make money. How
Actually,
do you mind? I mean, do you mind me asking you that?
It's a good question, but yeah, you're right. At first, I felt horrible because I felt that the whole bottom had come out of my can because, like I said, I mean, I was used to now making good money. I was driving. My wife was driving a Cadillac. I had a Lincoln Continental. We're living in a brand new house with a swimming
You had the
pool.
toys.
Had all the toys and all the benefits and my kids had never seen anything without that.
Yeah.
And when I sold the house, I was enough equity there so I could get them a nice house, but not what they expected.
Yeah.
But they got it all, and I walked out with nothing.
Sure.
So, like I said, yeah, I was desperate because I tried to apply to work with people. Nobody would hire me because they would see the kind of money I was making before, and I said, "Nah,
Yeah.
you're not gonna stay with us very long because you're used to making this kind of money." And I was begging for the jobs, and no. I remember even calling the Marine Corps, the U.S. Army, everybody, and they said, "No, you're too old. At 35, wow. You can't." No, I'm sorry. So I was that desperate, and until I decided, well, I did good at manufactured homes, and I'm great. I understand the business, and what do I do? And now this is like a year and something that I already had closed down, and
sure,
the economy was just barely starting to get up. And by the way, in between, I lost my dad, and that was hard on me because I was there till the last days, and
yeah,
I tried the best to take care of him, but he was 65 when he passed, and to me that was premature. So anyway, that's when I decided that I needed to do that, and thank goodness I didn't close my doors. When I shut down, I left all the doors open. I paid everybody. Everybody knew that I was good. In fact,
even when of your word.
Yeah, even when I closed down, people didn't know I didn't have any money. They all thought that I had money.
Oh, okay. Like so, you golden parachuted out or something?
Yeah, that's how they figured it, because I had done so well and the banks knew me and all that, and I paid them. They thought I had a lot of money. In fact, I remember going to meetings and everybody thought they were automatically assumed that I had a lot of money, and I didn't. So that kind of helped me, because I remember that I went to what was then a savings and loan, which no longer is in business, and I spoke to the president and I told him, look, here's the true story. Okay?
Right.
I don't have any money, but I want to get back into the business that I'm good at. And just with that, he said, how much do you need? And I said, as much as I can get. And he said,
how big's that checkbook?
Well, I know. And I said, well, we can't make it very large, Joe, what you're telling me, but I have a limit that I can write out without permission, or without going, I guess, to the board. So he loaned me, I think, $60,000. And I used that so I could buy manufactured homes. But I also went to another friend who I told him the same story. And he said, Joe, I have this piece of land, great little location, and I'm not using it. Just pay the property taxes for me and clean it. And you can put them there. So that's where People's Manufactured Housing started.
On a $60,000 loan,
$60,000
borrowed lot.
Borrowed lot.
That is awesome. Okay.
Yeah, and that was the first step. The second step was to get lenders to accept you to finance your manufactured home. So when the manufactured home business knows to do all the lenders that you had gone under, but they understood what happened, but still you had closed.
Right.
It was like not all the big lenders wanted to lend me money to finance the homes for our customers.
Okay.
So that was another battle. How do I get the lenders or the new lenders that are coming into play to approve me as an approved vendor, so I can get my clients financed with it because they have better programs? I tried and I tried for years, and it was very difficult. Well, I don't know if it was years. I don't know how long it was. But I do remember one particular one, and that's why I'm getting to that. It was a company called Green Tree Financing.
I remember that.
Okay, well, they said, no, we can't do it with you. No. And every month, on the dot, I would call him and ask him the same question. How about now? Like the guy in the commercial, can you hear me now? Yeah. And I remember one lady came to visit me, and she said still no, and I remember telling her, okay, but I'm gonna be one of your biggest dealers someday.
Right.
And she smiled like, yeah, right. And I did.
Yeah, you did.
I did. Not only was I one of the biggest dealers for them, I was probably also became one of the largest manufacturing companies in the United States for Fleetwood Homes.
I remember going to the award shows with you, because by that time, like, I had worked my way up to like a managerial role, and yeah, I remember going, and it was so great because there were all these dealers from all across Texas, and everybody knew Peoples.
Well, if you remember, everybody thought it was that the show was for Peoples, and it wasn't. It was for everybody.
Right.
But since we kept taking all the awards,
yeah, it was like,
it seemed like it was
y'all can just go home now. Like, y'all just go on to the bar. We'll meet you there later. We got a few more plaques to accept. But I remember that. And I was so grateful to be able to be a part of that, because when I came with you, when I met you, and I've told a lot of the people I work with the story, right? The story of that interview, and that story goes down in history for me, because I had never interviewed for anything in my life, and I didn't know jack about mobile homes, but I remember I guess she was an accountant for you, Chris Alvarenga?
Yes.
She was an accountant for you, and she saw me selling pillows at a flea market. And she approached me, and come to find out I was friends with her daughter anyway. But she was like, you should really look into this mobile home thing. Like, I work for a mobile home dealer, blah, blah, blah. I think you'd be really good at it. And I was like, okay, whatever. And I remember I looked you guys up, and I drove over to the location you had on the north side, off of like Man Road or something like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I drove over there, and again, I'm selling in flea markets in South Texas, right? So it's 105 degrees in the shade, whatever. And I walked into this place, and I see all these people walking around dressed up with ties and air conditioning and having a good time. And, it's back when Vasquez was running it. And, and I didn't speak to nobody. I just looked, and I was like, okay, yeah, I gotta do this. Right. And this is before I went and interviewed with you. And then it was like, okay, well, you need to get ready for the interview. And I was like, well, what do I need for the interview? And they're like, well, you need a tie. Well, I didn't own a tie. I didn't own a dress shirt. Like, I borrowed that tie and that dress shirt for that interview with you. And I sat out there, and I remember sweating so profusely because I was so nervous to meet you, because I had to have this job, that I'm like dripping, and like Sandra or somebody who worked for you at the time is looking at me like, do you need water? And I'm like, I'll be fine. And then I get to go in, and I get to sit in front of you, and I don't even remember what I said to you. All I remember is like I was basically begging for you to hire me. And you asked me for a resume. And I was like, what's a resume? You're like, go figure it out, bring it to me, and we'll talk. And I remember I went and I wrote, and like they say resumes are supposed to be like a page, maybe two. I brought you a stack of papers that was supposedly a resume, and you just like set it off to the side, looked at me, and was like, all right, kid. But I remember walking out of there like I had just won the freaking lotto. I had no idea what I was going to do or what I was going to sell. I knew nothing about mobile homes, and I had no clue where Zapata Highway was.
Well, let me tell you something about that interview. I played a little with you on that, but basically I was ready to hire you before you walked in, because Chris told me, Joe, you need to hire this guy. I said, why? He said, he's white, blue-eyed, blonde. And he speaks better Spanish than all the people out there. And,
so I didn't need to be that nervous?
No. No, then he told me you were selling pillows and how great you were. So actually, I wanted to go and look for you, bring you, and tell you I want to give you a job. So, but I was just playing a little hardball on you.
Well, it worked. You scared the heck out of me. But and I also remember back then the way the structure was is It was that draw toward commission. You gave it to us for 3 weeks, right? Not like now to where you keep getting a draw and all that other stuff. Back then it was you get 3 weeks, and if you don't sell anything, you can still come to work, but you don't get anything until you sell something. And I'll never forget, like, it took me 6 weeks to sell the first mobile home. For those last 3 weeks, to where I would go home and be like, you didn't get a paycheck? No, but man, I'm going to sell something soon. I just know it's coming. And then I did. I finally sold my first one, and dude, it was game on after that. Like, it was just, oh, I get it now, you know? But yeah, it was so much fun. And I'm sorry, I don't want to railroad this. This is not my story. This is yours. So when you finally got this loan, and you got the land, and you're working on, you said you started with just one home?
No, I had 3. I had one in the middle and 2 on each side because it was a very lot. It wasn't a big lot.
Right.
So the one in the middle was kind of like my office too.
Right.
And since I didn't have any inventory, I had to sell them off brochures.
Really?
So people had to custom order, you know. But like I said, I knew what I was doing, and that's when I started thinking, what I'm doing by hand, I need to do it with a computer. And of course, back then, computers didn't have hard drives; they had floppy drives.
Right.
And a lot of people were not really good at computer programming. But I needed something like that because when I started selling those homes, like it was like telling the guy, okay, I can't tell you this one because I need it.
Right.
I could sell the ones on the side, but if I sold the one on the side, the two, then I would have less to show. So my intent was always to tell the customer, look, custom build it. Don't buy it the way I have it here.
Make it yours.
Make it yours, exactly. You know, be specific on what you want, the colors, the appliances, you know, the exterior and all of that. And it started playing off well. You know, I started selling them that way. And I was salesman at the beginning. I was bookkeeper. I was everything.
Yeah.
And then I started hiring sales staff, and I had 2 sales staffs. So now we're 3 salesmen with the same philosophy, you know, of how we'll get our clients in, how we sell our homes. And we got to the point that, hey, we need more space now. Now we need inventory.
Right.
You know, and at that point, I went to Laredo National Bank again, and I spoke to the main man. And he said, well, Joe, I have this nice corner lot on Man Road in San Dario. And again, I told him, well, but I can't pay you any money, blah, 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 you know, and I started playing a little bit of hardball with him.
Yeah.
And he said, well, Joe, you had it in the good times, you know, and you left me out to dry. You did a lot of improvements. You left them there. And I said, yeah, but I think I can do it again. Give me a chance. But I can pay a lot of money. He said, well, right now I have it leased out to a guy that's selling plants and trees and all that, like a nursery. And I said, oh, I just need enough space to put at least 5, 6 mobile homes. And he was a great human being. And he said, okay, Joe, I trust you and I believe you. I'm going to let you go in there and just pay my property taxes.
Wow.
He said, but I'm not going to do that forever. He said, I want you to do this till you get back on your feet.
Right.
And I said, okay, fine. And that's where I moved in. I put my new office unit and a little more homes. The property was ideal because when we had it under Mobile City, we fixed it up like a community.
Right.
So it was a great show place. But I had this guy with a nursery. And when I went and I told him, I remember telling him that, hey, I'm going to go a few homes. And the guy said, yeah, right. Pretty soon this place is going to be full of mobile homes. They're going to kick me out.
And he wasn't far from the truth.
He was forecasting the future.
He forecasted the future. Wow, man. Golly. So, what year do you remember what year that was that you launched? Was it in the 80s, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was in the 80s, but this is towards the end of the 1980s, and it was still kind of difficult because, like I said, there was more manufactured home repossessions than anywhere in the country.
Right.
And that's because new home sales had dropped, financing was high, hard to get, people lost their jobs, payments had gone up, so they lost their homes. So what I started doing is to supplement me with, besides the new manufactured homes, is I started buying repossessed homes at discount prices
Mm-hmm.
because the lenders didn't know what to do with them. They had them in huge yards. So I would go in day by day and just spend hundreds of hours there, maybe to find the right homes that I wanted, and then I would bid on them. They would take my bid, I'd bring them in, I'd remodel them, and I would resell them, and I would make a profit. And that's how my cash flow started growing and growing
Wow.
and growing.
Okay.
To where that would help me maintain the new home business until the new home business came back. So I kind of had to have a source of income one way on one end to help me get back into the new home business.
Wow.
So it was a process that took me a while, several years, until financing was loose.
Yeah.
And, everybody had forgotten the
Bad
bad loans
times.
or the bad times, and there's new people in there, and the rest is history. We went from selling 6, 7 homes a day to where back in 2000 we were selling one home, if you remember right, every 12 hours of the day, or about 700 and some houses a year.
Yeah. No, I remember and again, this is like at the peak, I guess. I don't know. It was, if we didn't close like 12 or 15 units a month on one location, it was like, what are you guys doing? Like, are you asleep? And it was just, but it was, you had created a culture. And I don't even, like, did you, were you aware of that? Like, were you purposefully creating the culture we had? Because we had a really great culture.
Well, actually, I didn't say the culture because back then I had a friend of mine who told me how the military worked.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided that, hey, I'm going to run this company like the military. When you come in, you're basically a rookie, but in the military, you're a private. So
Right.
And I don't know if you recall, but you remember how everybody got ranked?
I still got my ring.
Exactly. Everybody got ranked, and it was based on knowledge and performance.
Mm-hmm.
If the more you learn, the better it was for you to move up the ranks. And then you started selling, you would move up more of the ranks till you became a captain. And when you became a captain, you would get your own lot. But it wasn't me doing it all. Everybody had to share their amount of time and effort, because if you recall, we hired Grayson Schepfinger.
Oh, well, yeah, and I definitely want to talk about Grayson.
Yeah, he would come in every
3 months.
Every 3 months, and educate us on the benefits of being able to sell a home by our knowledge and not by the product. While everybody was selling on product, we were selling on knowledge.
Right.
And he told us how to overcome questions, from the client, objections and all of that. And that was part of our training. And I remember we had like 12 manuals, and every manual had a stage.
Yep.
And as you moved up the stages, your learning became better. Your way to sell homes became easier, but you couldn't do it without a computer program, which we finally got, if you recall.
I do.
And that helped us completely control the sales environment.
Yeah.
Which nobody in the country ever had.
Yeah, I remember, because that was the first time I ever got exposed to, and again, this carries with me throughout my, so many years in sales, if you will. He was the first, business coach I had, and I remember every 3 months, and now I work with a company that we actually have coaches on staff, right? So I have coaches that reach out to my people every other week. But like back then, like to get it every 3 months, it was keeping it fresh. But and in thinking back to the approach of it, it was relationship selling before relationship selling became a thing.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Because the matchmaker form, I still remember. The matchmaker form was mainly, it was how many bedrooms are you looking for, but it was more uncovering, their why.
Their needs, their wants, and their ability to pay.
Exactly.
Or willingness to pay.
But, doing that in the flow, because, again, our competitors and even some of our sales guys for a while, it was always the thing, like, I want to see that house, and it was like you just walk them over, right? And breaking that mentality of that's not the way to do it, make them go into the office, make them sit down, make them talk to you first, was actually you developing the relationship with that potential client. while you're qualifying them at the same time. Now it's, it's the way business is done. But back then I think about it and I was like, we were, Grayson was pioneering a form of selling, in my opinion, that was zeroed in on mobile homes, but it was relationship selling before that was even a thing, And I haven't looked that guy up. I don't know what he's up to. Have you heard from him at all?
No, it's been years. I think he lives in Hackensack, New Jersey, or something like that.
Wow.
But no, it's been years.
Dude, I remember he'd roll in.
I don't even know he's alive today.
I still remember the flip chart we would do with the company story.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, man, I mastered that sucker.
No, there were great times, but it was always the will from everybody to succeed at all costs, legally.
Of course, yeah, and to take care of our clients. Which we did.
Which 99.9% most of the time.
Yeah. So obviously you're not in mobile homes anymore.
No, I'm not.
You transitioned out, and you actually build houses now, correct?
We're building custom built homes, and we're still in the what I call, the medium income or below.
Right.
Don't want to be involved with a high end. That's not my target area.
Sure.
So I think that homes between $125,000 and $150,000 is for the masses in Laredo, because not everybody's making $55,000, $100,000 a year. So we need to cater to those people, and we are getting to that. So, but we're also transitioning to development, where we develop land, do the subdivision, sell to our competitors, and we also build homes in those lots.
Yeah. And you said you're in development. I mean, here's the thing. Like, I've known you so long, I know you got fingers in a lot of pies. You know what I mean? Like, I know Joe Medina does not sit still, right? I heard some rumor you're trying to retire. I think Cindy was telling me, like, oh, yeah, no, he wants to retire. And I'm like, bullshit. Like, if there's one thing I know about your dad, he's not going to go play golf.
No. I hate playing golf. It's nice, but I rather play racquetball because it's more active. Well, in a way, yeah, I'm trying to retire of some of the things that I'm involved, because there's, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know which one it is better. Yeah, I'm involved in too many things, but one project alone is for maybe 50, 75-year project.
Wow.
So that's massive. I'm sure that I won't be around to see it, but I'm heavily involved in that.
That's legacy, ain't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's that legacy.
Yeah, and then we have this patent product we have patents around the world. It's a special construction system that we can use for anything from residential to industrial or manufacturing, and it's a wall that withstands over 255 miles per hour winds, and that's also taken a lot of our time.
Wow.
My time. So.
Wait, is that the one
high tech tilt?
High tech tilt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't you tell me that it would withstand a blast?
Well, we have tested it to be blast resistant.
Blast resistant. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I don't want to
that's with another. It's a component of our system with another component, so we end up with a wall that looks like ours, but it's blast resistant.
Wow. See, okay, now hold on. And I don't think you said what the first job was before mobile homes, but correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't it Coca-Cola?
The first job that I had?
Before you got into manufacturing?
No, I actually was working as a teenager for General Beverages, and I think they sold Pepsi-Cola.
Pepsi-Cola. So, like, when you were doing that, like, what was it, like a route?
Well, it was a route, yeah, but it wasn't a route because, they had little stores here and there, and nobody wanted them.
Yeah.
So when I asked for the job as a teenager, and actually there was like 16, because I know I had a license, and the guy said, well, I do need somebody to deliver to all these little stores, So he gave me a job to take care of all the little mom and pop stores around town that nobody
people
wanted.
Didn't want it.
No, because everybody wanted to go like to HEVs or the big stores, because it was one big load, get done, and go back to the office, and you're done.
Right.
And in my case, I had to run 50 miles a day while everybody was doing 10.
Well, and the reason I bring that up is because, again, there's a lot of people out there, myself included, right? Like, it never matters where you start. It's where you decide you want to finish. I mean, do you agree with that statement?
Absolutely. Let me just tell a little bit about that story, because I love telling it.
Yes.
They gave me that job because it was in the summer.
Yeah.
And like I said, nobody wanted it. But I started doing the same thing I've always done. I try to see the mistakes that everybody was doing.
Right.
And everybody would come in the afternoons, park their vehicles, and go home. Okay? Then in the morning, they would come in, load up their trucks, and take off. So what I decided to do is, first of all, I would drive like a bat out of hell. Get all my locations done and taken, and then I would end up being the first person back at the location, and I would have them load my truck up then. So they would load up my truck. So I would leave while everybody's just coming in with their vehicles, and I'm already there. My truck's loaded.
You're hitting the route.
I would hit the route first thing in the morning before everybody else, while they're still loading their trucks. So pretty soon I was first one out, last one, and well, pretty much the last one. Last one to leave the look. Let me correct me. First one out in the morning.
Yeah.
First one into the office to return in the afternoon.
Wow.
And they didn't like me. My boss did, but not them.
Oh my gosh.
But it was just looking, and that's what I've done in my life. I always look at what's wrong.
Right.
With what my competitors are doing, so I can compete against them. What are they doing wrong?
Yeah.
What is it that I can improve?
Yeah.
How can I make it better? And how do I time manage myself? And
wow.
I did that when I was 16 years old.
Get that. You were an entrepreneur before people knew what that was.
I guess. Well, I call it need, because I had to go study. I had to go work and study. Because wow. I was taking summer schools also. So.
Wow. Man, dude. So for anybody listening to this who wants to connect with you, what's the best way to find you? If somebody wanted to reach out and ask you a question about a piece of advice, is there a way? I mean, are you open to that?
Well, my wife's telling me that I should charge, because I still get a lot of people that come in that I met through the years. And
sure.
They walk in and they ask me, "Hey, Joe, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that?" Even partners that I have today. And I have partners that are attorneys, doctors, engineers, bankers. And they call me, "Hey, Joe, what do you think about this and that?" And I give them my advice based on what I know. And so that's not a problem. People do that with me a lot.
Right.
So I guess the best way they could either email me, come by my office, and if I have the time, I'll visit.
Well, and I'm gonna tag you on social media, because that's kind of how I push this out. So hopefully somebody is. And the reason I say it is because one of the big things, and again, this is dedicated to you as my mentor, but it's also to help educate people from the aspect of stuff ain't always easy, right? Anything worth doing is usually going to be really hard, but it's about knowing that even though you're going to have some really dark days, that whether it's through need or just sheer desire, there's a way to come back. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, if you remember the rings that we used to give, there were eagles.
Yeah.
Because you had a choice. You can go fly with the turkeys or fly with the eagles.
Yeah.
And life is about that.
Exactly.
Do you want to learn from the best or learn from the worst? Do you want to hang around with the worst or you want to hang around with the best? It's a matter of choice.
Right.
And the choice is always left to that individual. Who do I want to be with? What do I want to be? Where do I want to be in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now?
Right.
It's planning. Planning on top of that.
Yeah. Plan, dreams without a plan, they can't be considered a goal.
No.
So, well, Joe, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up, man. I just really want to thank you again for taking time to do this. I know you're a busy guy.
No problem, Bob. Thank you for coming.
All right. Hey, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this. And like I said, there will be more interviews like this with other people that I consider my mentor, but I wanted to start off with Joe because, he's been one of the ones that I've always come back to for a lot of things. And you'll see him tagged in the description of this, and, reach out to him. The man's got a wealth of knowledge. With that said, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Give us a like, give us a share, give me some feedback. But whatever you do, make sure you stay social. All right? Have a good one, everyone. Take care.